A shadow glides through the thick fog of San Francisco's Presidio Heights, holding a torn, blood-soaked square of a cab driver's shirt. A morbid trophy he will soon mail to the newspaper along with a terrifying promise to blow up a school bus full of children. A shadow glides through the thick fog of San Francisco's Presidio Heights, holding a torn, blood-soaked square of a cab driver's shirt. A morbid trophy he will soon mail to the newspaper, along with a terrifying promise to blow up a school bus full of children. It is October 11th, 1969. Moments earlier, inside a yellow taxi parked at Washington and Cherry Streets, 28-year-old Paul Stein was executed at point-blank range. The killer did not steal the cash drawer. He did not run away in a panic. Instead, he calmly leaned over the front seat, cut off a large piece of the driver's bloody shirt, and wiped down the door handles. As police cruisers raced toward the scene with sirens blaring, they passed a quiet white man walking down the street. But because of a fatal dispatch error over the radio, one that misidentified the suspect as a black male, the officers kept driving. The figure melted into the dark trees of the Presidio, carrying with him the key to the most infamous unsolved mystery in American history. He was a phantom who taunted the public, challenged the authorities to complex cryptograms, and terrorized Northern California under a name that still chills the nation to its core, the Zodiac. To understand the shadow that fell over California, you have to go back to a time before the cryptic letters, before the executioner's hood, and before the media frenzy. In the late 1960s, the San Francisco Bay Area was the epicenter of cultural transformation. The Summer of Love had brought tens of thousands of young people to the region. High school sweethearts spent warm weekends hanging out by the lakes. College students gathered at local libraries, and young couples parked along quiet country roads, completely unaware that a predator was stalking the highways connecting Berryessa, Vallejo, and Napa Valley. Betty Lou Jensen was just 16 years old, a sweet, quiet student at Hogan High School in Vallejo. David Faraday was 17, an Eagle Scout with a bright future, and a reputation for being fiercely protective of his friends. December 20th, 1968, was supposed to be a special night, their very first official date. They attended a Christmas concert at their high school, and then took a drive out to Lake Herman Road, a secluded lover's lane on the eastern edge of Berryessa. The road was pitch black, bordered by rolling fields and gravel turnouts. They parked David's station wagon under the cold winter stars, listening to the radio. They were ordinary kids living normal, peaceful lives, completely unaware that a dark sedan was pulling into the turnout right beside them. Shortly after 11 p.m., a passerby noticed the station wagon parked in the gravel. Minutes later, another driver made a horrifying discovery. Betty Lou Jensen was lying on her side in the cold dirt, meters away from the car, dead from multiple gunshot wounds. David Faraday was lying near the back wheel, barely breathing, struck by a bullet to the head. When Berryessa police and Solano County Sheriff's deputies rushed to Lake Herman Road, the scene was chilling in its starkness. There were no signs of a robbery. Betty Lou's purse was untouched. David's wallet was still in his pocket. Forensic technicians carefully gathered shell casings from the gravel, identifying them as Winchester Western Super X, copper-coated .22 caliber rounds, likely fired from a J.C. Higgins Model 80 semi-automatic pistol. The killer had approached the vehicle, fired shots into the rear tires and windows to force the teenagers out, and then executed them as they tried to flee. There were no tire tracks to identify the killer's car, no fingerprints on the station wagon, and no witnesses in the quiet dark. It was a senseless, violent attack without an obvious motive, leaving investigators staring at a dead end on a lonely stretch of road. 6 months passed. The snow melted. Summer arrived, and the terror of Lake Herman Road began to fade into the background of local memory. Then came the 4th of July weekend, 1969. 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin was a popular, energetic waitress in Vallejo, known for her outgoing personality and infectious laugh. On the night of July 4th, she picked up 19-year-old Michael McCullough, a close friend, to grab a late-night snack. Finding the local drive-in crowded, Darlene drove her brown Corvair to Blue Rock Springs Park, a quiet, wooded area about 4 miles from where Betty Lou and David had been killed months earlier. Around midnight, as they sat talking in the dark parking lot, another car pulled up behind them, its headlights blindingly bright. The driver idled for a moment, drove off, and then returned minutes later, parking directly behind Darlene's Corvair to block them in. A man stepped out, carrying a heavy flashlight. Michael assumed it was a police officer checking for park curfews and began reaching for his wallet. But as the man reached the passenger side window, he didn't ask for identification. He blindingly flashed the light into their eyes and opened fire with a 9mm Luger pistol. 9 shots rang out in rapid succession. Bullets tore through the car, striking both Michael and Darlene. Michael was hit in the jaw, shoulder, and leg, screaming in agony. As the shooter walked back toward his car, he heard Michael groaning in the back seat. Coldly, the killer turned around, walked back to the Corvair, and fired 4 more rounds directly into both victims before calmly driving away into the night. At 12:40 a.m., just 40 minutes after the shooting at Blue Rock Springs Park, the Vallejo Police Department dispatch radio buzzed. Operator answered a call coming from a payphone at a gas station at Springs and Tuolumne Roads, just blocks from the police station. The caller spoke in a low, monotone, accentless voice, speaking slowly as if reading from a prepared script. "I want to report a double murder. If you will go 2 miles east on Columbus Parkway to a public park, you will find the kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." Police rushed to the phone booth, but the caller was gone. Meanwhile, paramedics at Blue Rock Springs Park fought desperately to save the victims. Darlene Ferrin was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. Miraculously, 19-year-old Michael Mago survived. Despite severe trauma and pain, Michael was able to give detectives the first description of the killer. A heavy-set white male, about 5 feet 8 inches tall, short light brown hair with a large face. Investigators now faced a terrifying reality. The killer was not an isolated madman. He was a serial predator operating on a schedule, returning to the same territory, and actively taunting the police. Then the game escalated. On July 31st, 1969, 3 identical handwritten letters arrived at the newsrooms of the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner. The letters contained precise, unpublished details about the murders at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs, details only the killer and the police could possibly know, such as the position of the victims, the number of shots fired, and the brand of ammunition used. Accompanying each letter was 1/3 of a complex 408-symbol cipher consisting of strange geometric shapes, Greek letters, and astrological signs. The writer demanded that the newspapers print his ciphers on the front page by Friday afternoon, or he would go on a rampage, killing a dozen people over the weekend. The Bay Area was paralyzed with fear. Editors debated whether to comply with a terrorist's demands, but ultimately published the cryptograms. Days later, on August 4th, A follow-up letter arrived at the San Francisco Examiner. It began with a phrase that would soon echo through history. "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. It was the very first time he used the name." While police code breakers and the National Security Agency worked frantically to crack the 408 cipher, it wasn't a military intelligence expert who finally solved it. It was a high school history teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife, Betty, from Salinas. Using simple frequency analysis, they unlocked the code. The decoded message was horrifying. "I like killing people, because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wool game in the forest, because man is the most danger animal of all. To kill something gives me the most trilithing experience." Curiously, the cipher ended without revealing his identity, despite his earlier promises. As summer turned to autumn, the Zodiac struck again, shifting his tactics in a way that shocked even seasoned homicide detectives. On Saturday afternoon, September 27th, 1969, two college students, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, were enjoying a peaceful picnic on a sunlit peninsula at Lake Berryessa in Napa County. Around 6 p.m., Cecilia noticed a man watching them from behind a cluster of oak trees. As he approached, the couple gasped. The man was wearing a black waist-length executioner's hood that covered his entire head and torso. Cutouts revealed his eyes behind dark clip-on sunglasses. Stenciled in white paint across the chest of the hood was a large symbol, a circle with a cross drawn through it, the crosshairs of the Zodiac. Holding a gun in a trembling hand, the hooded figure claimed he was an escaped convict from a prison in Montana or Colorado, driving a stolen car and needed money in their vehicle to get to Mexico. He pulled out pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline and ordered Cecilia to tie Brian up before tying Cecilia himself. Brian attempted to reason with the man, offering his wallet and car keys, but the stranger was not interested in robbery. Without warning, he drew a foot-long hunting knife with a wooden handle and plunged it repeatedly into Brian's back. He then turned to Cecilia, savagely stabbing her as she screamed in terror. Leaving the couple bleeding on the grass, the killer walked calmly up the hill to Brian's white Carmen Ghia. He pulled out a black felt tip pen and wrote on the driver's door, "Vallejo 1220, 68 divided by 7, 4, 69 Sep 27 to 69 minus 630 by knife." At 7:40 p.m., the Napa Police Department received a phone call from a payphone at a car wash on Main Street. The caller was the same monotone voice. "I want to report a murder. No, a double murder. They are 2 miles north of Park headquarters. They were in a white Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. I'm the one that did it." Police located the phone receiver hanging loose, still damp from the car wash. They recovered a wet palm print from the phone booth, but it yielded no matches. Cecilia Shepard tragically succumbed to her injuries. 2 days later, Brian Hartnell, against all odds, survived severe lung injuries and provided investigators with a vivid description of the executioner's costume, his distinct voice, and his slow, methodical demeanor. 2 weeks later, the Zodiac abandoned the quiet parks and secluded lakes, bringing his reign of terror into the dense urban heart of San Francisco with the execution of cab driver Paul Steen. The police sketch compiled after the Stein murder showed a white male in his early 30s with heavy-rimmed glasses, a square jaw, and crew-cut hair. Days after the murder, the San Francisco Chronicle received an envelope containing a letter from the Zodiac along with a piece of Paul Stein's blood-soaked shirt, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was the killer. The letter contained his most terrifying threat yet. "School children are nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." Panic gripped the Bay Area. School buses were followed by police escorts, armed guards rode with children, and parents stood watch at bus stops. On November 8, 1969, the killer sent another complex cryptogram to the Chronicle, the infamous 340 cipher. He followed it with a diagram detailing an underground bomb made with ammonium nitrate and flashlight batteries, claiming he would use it to blow up buses. Detectives, forensic experts, and federal agents were inundated with thousands of tips. The investigation expanded exponentially, focusing on several key suspects whose lives intersected with the clues left by the killer. Arthur Leigh Allen quickly emerged as the primary suspect in the eyes of many investigators. He was a former elementary school teacher and Navy veteran who lived in Vallejo. The circumstantial evidence against Allen was staggering. He wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch, featuring the exact crossed circle logo used by the killer. In 1991, survivor Michael McGough picked Allen's photo out of a lineup, identifying him as the man who shot him at Blue Rock Springs. Allen owned a Royal typewriter, matching the machine used to type early letters connected to suspected Zodiac victim Cherry Joe Bates in Riverside. Friends reported that Allen had spoken about killing people, using a flashlight attached to a gun, and calling himself the Zodiac prior to the murders. On the day of the Lake Berryessa attack, Allen was in the area, returning home with bloody knives in his car, which he claimed were used to slaughter chickens. Furthermore, when Allen was institutionalized in 1974 for child molestation, the Zodiac's letters abruptly ceased. Yet, despite this wall of circumstantial evidence, the physical science continually cleared Arthur Leigh Allen. His fingerprints and palm prints did not match those found on Paul Stein's cab, on the Lake Berryessa car door, or on the letters. Handwriting experts from the California Department of Justice explicitly ruled Allen out as the author of the ciphers. When advanced DNA profiling emerged in the late 1990s and early 2000s, genetic material extracted from the back of the Zodiac's postage stamps did not match Allen's DNA. Allen maintained his innocence until his death, from a heart attack in 1992, remaining the only suspect ever served with search warrants in the case. Other names rose to prominence in the public consciousness over the decades, driven by amateur sleuths, books, and media reports. In 2014, Gary L. Stewart published a book claiming his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., was the Zodiac, pointing to a striking resemblance to the police sketch and claiming his father's name was hidden in a cipher. Police reviewed the claims and stated there was no physical evidence connecting Best to the crimes. In 2021, a volunteer group called the Case Breakers claimed that a former military veteran named Gary Francis Posty was the killer, citing scars on his forehead that matched the composite sketch. Law enforcement agencies quickly issued statements clarifying that no definitive evidence substantiated claims against Posty. In 2022, author Jared Kobeck put forward Paul Duer based on extensive archival research into 1960s zins and weapons manuals, though his theory also lacked forensic verification. High-profile criminals like Unabomber Ted Kaczynski and Charles Manson were thoroughly investigated and ultimately ruled out. While investigators chased leads, the Zodiac's 340 cipher sat unsolved for more than 50 years, frustrating the world's brightest mathematical minds. Then, in December 2020, a breakthrough occurred not in a police lab, but through a global collaboration of private citizens. A team consisting of American software engineer David Oranchak, Australian programmer Sam Blake, and Belgian computer scientist Jarl van Eyck utilized custom-built mathematical software to process over 650,000 possible transposition combinations of the 340 symbols. After years of computational analysis, the software cracked the structural alignment, The solution was submitted to the FBI, which officially verified its accuracy. The decoded message, sent by the Zodiac in November 1969, read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me that wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life is a life will be an easy one in paradise death." The solution proved that the killer was a master of misdirection, using complex diagonal reading patterns to obscure his message, yet offered no direct name. After 1974, after sending one final letter referencing the movie Badlands and signing off as the Red Phantom, the communications stopped completely. The killer vanished into the background of Northern California, leaving behind a cold trail, 5 confirmed dead, 2 survivors forever scarred, and a legacy of fear that redefined American crime reporting. The investigation officially remains open in Napa, Solano, and San Francisco counties. Modern detectives continue to run trace DNA samples against global genealogical databases, holding on to the hope that a distant relative's genetic profile will finally uncover the true identity of the man behind the mask. The Zodiac case stands as a haunting reminder of the limits of human justice and the terrifying vulnerability of an open society. It revealed how easily a single calculating individual could manipulate the press, exploit communication failures between police departments, and weaponize fear to hold an entire region hostage. The true horror of the Zodiac is not just the lives he brutally stole on dark country roads, but the realization that he walked among us, unseen, uncaught, and unidentified, leaving a chilling question mark etched permanently into American history.